Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. Mercedes back on the top step of the podium in Austria in incredible circumstances, opens the door yet again to Toto Wolff to try his best to lure Max Verstappen to the silver arrows. Of course, Max was deemed responsible for the contact with Norris towards the end of the Grand Prix that allowed George Russell to take victory, but Toto has been one of the first individuals to come to his defence. Highly controversial given, of course, the history with Hamilton and Verstappen a couple of years ago, certainly that McLaren were commenting on after the Grand Prix. Loads of drama to dive into today. Very much intrigued to your perspective in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new. As always, I greatly appreciate it. First of all, driver market drama. Carlos Sainz is not making a decision yet. We were pretty sure he was going to be confirmed at Williams over the Spanish Grand Prix weekends. That never happened. There are three teams. There's Alpine, there is Williams, and there is Audi. And okay, that's Sauber, but they're going to be Audi in the near future. They are biding their time. Some of them are. Well, Carlos Sainz is definitely biding his time. Carlos Sainz actually says, though, look, if there are teams that can't wait, I can't do anything about that, because Sainz is just waiting effectively to make this call. Apparently he's going to make his decision after the Silverstone Grand Prix. I'm sure that he must have some idea what he's going to do, and to be honest, I thought that it was going to be to Williams, like quite convinced really, but then apparently Alpine have really come into play, and that's why things are taking a bit longer. But maybe a team like Audi, team like, Williams, who knows, are saying, you know what, Carlos, we're not so interested anymore, you're wasting our time type thing, but maybe that's just a negotiating tactic on their side. There was also, again, some drama this weekend on track between Ocon and Gasly. There always is, but actually as Sainz hesitates a bit, Ocon is now a slightly stronger candidate to potentially go to a couple of those teams. There is an understanding, though, that, let's say, Williams or Audi or something, they will be looking at Bottas. Okay, Audi, obviously Bottas is already there as Sauber, but, other teams, if Sainz doesn't go to, let's say, Williams, Bottas might be the man. The rumour is that Ocon to Haas is the most likely of the options right now, alongside probably Oliver Bearman in that car for next season. Speaking of Haas, by the way, they had a sensational weekend. Whether they can keep this up going forwards, that really is the question here, but Haas have more upgrades on the way. Ayuka Komatsu says that it was a huge statement, more upgrades in Silverstone. They were pretty good in Silverstone historically, at least based on what they've done in Austria in the past. They've always been good at Austria, really, compared to their average over the season, but this weekend the results were really nice given what they would have wanted. Double points finish, of course. Look, the Verstappen-Norris contact certainly helps that. Ferrari, though, were kind of nowhere near the picture, right? Leclerc was out of the fight. Sainz was in the mix, but never really... Okay, got a podium in the end, but was never in the mix to actually be winning the Grand Prix. And there is concern about the Ferrari upgrades. The Imola package they brought worked as expected, but the Spain package is missing lap time. That is problematic because they've generated more load, as in more downforce, in the slower speed corners, but in the higher speed corners, they are suffering with bouncing. Again, this is a classic problem in these set of regulations, that it seems like the Ferrari regs, they might have flown slightly too close to the sun here in terms of the ride heights, so they're actually, whatever they're gaining in the slow speed right now, they're losing in the high speeds compared to what they previously did. That's compromising ride heights, that's compromising their overall performance, and that is basically why they've dropped back from where they were at the start of the season. Concerning, because this is effectively the first upgrade that Ferrari have brought under Vasseur, which actually hasn't really worked. Everything else has. Vasseur is still towing the line of, I'm optimistic, we're going to work it out, but clearly any sort of championship challenge they had has now dramatically fallen away, and it's McLaren who are in pole position to at least overtake Ferrari in the constructors and potentially, of course, win the entire thing. Vasseur says he's strangely optimistic about Ferrari's trajectory. There's a lot more speed to unlock. So the feeling is that the upgrades, there is potential there, but the problem is that one thing that they gained, they've lost something else. Now, whether they can fix that something else and therefore the car's going to be back fighting for pole and race wins, that's another question. But of course, the race they won in recent times was Monaco, not exactly the most representative circuit, right? But let's talk about this instance, because the Verstappen-Norris drama was causing, it was all the rave yesterday. Basically, what Verstappen had to say on it, not really taking any responsibility for what was deemed to be his fault by the stewards, but Max felt differently. Lando basically said, if Max doesn't apologise, we're no longer going to be friends. We'll see what happens in Silverstone, because most certainly Max has not apologised. He said, look, as far as he was concerned, I think he thinks it was a racing incident and maybe Lando was too over the line. And sure, they were both going balls to the wall. Like, Lando was sending moves down the inside, he was sending moves down the outside, trying to get the move done. It was getting very aggressive. I think there was inevitably going to be some sort of contact. There was, of course, a comparison, though, between this incident, which is Norris versus Verstappen 2024, and Verstappen versus Sainz 2023. So just to kind of share this out here we come up to the 150-metre board. This is Verstappen, the line that he's decided to take. Norris goes to the outside, brakes a bit later than Max. Obviously, he has the overspeed because of the DRS Open, and this is the time they get to roughly the 50-metre board, right? So you can see that Max has left lots of room here, and as Norris is braking, very late, obviously, he's going to be on the brakes here to try and go around the outside, or at least force Max to go defensive so he can get the switch back or whatever. This is at the 50-metre board, and you can see the gap that Norris has closes substantially to about here when the contact is therefore made and the Grand Prix is over. Now, look, I don't think this move from Max, while I do believe it was his fault, you know, it probably wasn't as big of a deal as people were making it out to be, because of course Norris has more track to use. Now, of course, he's coming in late, so he can't really move under braking anyway, because otherwise he's going to lock a tyre, and Max brakes a little bit earlier than Lando and is able to shift over to the left. Now, the comparison, of course, was between this incident, which was between Sainz, I'm pretty sure, and Max, which is a kind of similar thing, but it is different in the sense that they're at the 150-metre board now, and you can see Max is already alongside. So this allows a slightly different passage under the braking. Like, actually, Verstappen is way closer to Sainz than Norris was to Verstappen in that case. So basically, they both brake at the same time, and as we can see here, Sainz is moving over to the left-hand side and is squeezing Verstappen over it. But Verstappen's already committed to an on-the-curb line, and to be honest, yes, he gets pushed a little bit to the left, but Sainz doesn't leave him no room at all, and this allows actually Max to go for this move where you take the wide line on entry, you get the switch back, and then you eventually get the move done. So, you know, that was a nicely done situation there for Max. I do think this is slightly different, just given the nature of, you know, who was alongside at what point, the braking zones and this stuff, and therefore I don't think that in this circumstance Max, you know, should have moved over and squeezed as he tried to do. But look, it's obviously easy to say in hindsight. The stewards have made their decision on the matter, but as have the minds of, you know, many fans and also the teams and the drivers themselves. Helmut Marko actually takes, you know, responsibility on the Red Bull side. There was, of course, the fumbled pit stop, which caused all the drama in the first place. But even then, Helmut Marko was suggesting, well, we were pretty sure that Norris was going to get a 5-second penalty for exceeding the track limits based on the earlier incidents between the pair of them at turn 3. So potentially what he's saying is they could have told Max, hey, Lando's going to get a 5-second penalty here probably, just let him go. Like, don't race him too hard because we're going to be able to get first anyway type thing. But Red Bull weren't sure. So, you know, and I don't really blame Red Bull for doing what they did because, let's be real here, would Max have let him go anyway? Like, probably not, let's be honest. So Norris comes out and says, if he says he did nothing wrong, I lose a lot of respect for him for that. And basically Max said, I think I know fairly well what to do in these kind of scenarios. Didn't really think there was much in it from either side. Lando did also make an interesting statement on, effectively, he feels like Max could do what he wants because he's got a 70-point lead. Now, I'm not really sure the championship lead should have anything to do with the circumstance. I'm not really sure that it does in Max's case. I feel like Max would have raced anyone like that, regardless of the circumstances. But Norris is kind of like, look, Max is, yeah, sure, he's willing to crash because he's got the big championship lead, whereas crashing into me is affecting my championship big time, which is, of course, true. But Max also knows that it's possible to lose a big ground of the championship in a very short period of time. So I personally don't really think that had a massive amount to do with it. But Lando certainly made the comment in the press area yesterday. The big drama, though, really was coming out of McLaren boss Mr. Andrea Stella, discussing the decision-making from the stewards that's led to this over the last couple of years. And this was kind of the full quote. If you don't address these things honestly, they will come back. They've come back today because they were not addressed in the past when he was fighting with Lewis in 2021, and some of the driving standards needed to be punished in a harsher way. We have so much respect for Red Bull, so much respect for Max, which is, maybe that's true, but obviously we know that Zach Brown's been on a bit of a tirade against Red Bull over the last couple of years, right? The comments on Red Bull cheating, cheating, the cost cap stuff, the comments recently on Max saying that he wouldn't win without a Red Bull, all this type of stuff. They don't need to do this. This is basically compromising their reputation. Why would you do that? And even Martin Brundle, actually, in his kind of post-analysis, came to say the following: there appears to have been a thin veneer, effectively, that Verstappen seemed more, a calmer, more mature demeanour. But the feeling of Brundle is that actually doesn't take much to bring Max 1.0, as he describes it, back to the surface. With his default driving tactics and denials resurfacing, I'm making no excuses for him, but I do wonder if the ridiculous spat between his father and team boss Horner has finally surfaced on track for him. And I do wonder if there's anything in that. Do you think there's anything in that? Just because there was the big blow-up, really, between Jos and Christian behind the scenes, not even behind the scenes, in public, really, at Red Bull this week. Could that have affected the way that Verstappen's gone about his on-track action? Maybe it's got something to do with taking a bit of his focus away from the track. And obviously Max on the radio was saying, yeah, it was Norris's fault. And Brundle's like, look, that was a difficult listen. It damages their credibility. It was unnecessary for Red Bull. So the general feeling was, Norris was hard done by here. Max was maybe let off lightly with a 10-second penalty or whatever. Still got to finish the race and score some points. And Max was obviously considered by the stewards to be to blame. And I think, majority of fans probably feel that way as well. We even got this when Adam Norris, so Lando Norris's father, was liking this post, which basically said lap 1 of the British Grand Prix next week, with the famous Hamilton-Verstappen incident there in 2021, but instead a McLaren livery on the car with Lando's helmet. So definitely interesting, the possibility of some sort of retaliation, right, coming through for Norris against Max. And look, if they're not best buddies as they used to be, then who can rule that type of stuff out? So look, Andrea Stella was very clear. Lando Norris, it was very clear. The entire world knows who's responsible, says McLaren. And therefore, the race winners in Mercedes, they were also asked to some degree for their comment on the situation. So Toto Wolff decides to weigh in with his analysis as well. And this is what gets very interesting, right? Because Toto has made it very clear he is trying to sign Max. Hamilton is departing to Ferrari. Andrea Antonelli is the option for Mercedes to sign instead. He is not setting the world on fire in Formula 2 right now by any means, but Prema are a bit of a shambles. And there's lots to be said on Formula 2 and how representative it actually is, because if you guys watch the F2 race this weekend, you'll probably know that race did not show the championship in an especially good light when it comes to being a real important facet of whether you're going to become a Formula 1 driver or not. So Mercedes have their other reasons that they believe Kimi Antonelli is the man for them, and if they don't bring him in, that's because they've signed Max Verstappen. And this is what Toto Wolff's been trying to do. He's been trying to lure Max in, and of course yesterday they win a race, right? So Mercedes win a Grand Prix, showing clearly that there at least has been some progress with the car. Yes, they required the two guys up front to crash in order for that to happen, but nonetheless, Russell was ahead of a McLaren, he was ahead of a Ferrari, and therefore able to capitalise. And as Toto says, I think we still need to look at ourselves and say, what can we do to have a car that makes us able to win a race with those two at the front, and to do it more regularly. This is a moment where we can say that we can be a harbour port, a destination for the best drivers, including Max, but we are not there yet. So I'm not even, if I was him, I would not be considering a move just yet. But Toto ain't stopping talking about it, and he's saying, look, Max, yeah, I know you and Lando crashed, but we won the race, didn't we? So we're making progress. We've got this good 2026 engine. Red Bull are in a bit of a shambles, right? Like Christian Horner keeps beefing with your father. How about come over here and, we'll win races from there. This, however, was the big drama, really, of the story, is when Toto Wolff is commenting on the actual incident itself and just straight up defending Max. Now, you're expecting this from Max to defend himself. You're expecting this from Christian Horner and for the Red Bull team to defend Max's driving in this instance. But you wouldn't necessarily expect it from the team principal of one of his biggest rivals over the last couple of years. Yes, in some sense, Wolff has something to credit Max for, because without Max driving in the way that he did, Russell wouldn't have won the Grand Prix. But the real story was whether Max was at fault or not, because Andrea Stella basically said the way that Max drove against Lewis in 2021 went unpunished in many instances, and even pre-2021 to some degree. There were some questionable driving standards being employed, and Max was certainly part of that. The stewards largely did not, react as maybe many might have expected them to. And it's worth saying this was actually mentioned at the time by McLaren when Andrea Stella was there after the Brazilian crash, or basically the incident between Verstappen and Hamilton when he pushed him off into turn 4. The comment was made by McLaren at the time that, look, this is going to affect the driving standards, because if that goes unpunished, other drivers are going to do similar things. And of course, the same drivers can maybe get away with similar things as well. So the point was being made by McLaren that what happened a few years ago needed to be punished harder, and because it isn't, we're getting it again today. And as I said yesterday, I don't really blame Max for the way that he drives in these moments. Like, he knows that on the balance of probabilities, it's going to maximize his results. So, the incentives are aligned for Max to drive in this way, right? And, be absolutely no punches withheld and really race to the absolute limit of what's possible, and sometimes over it. And Toto is basically getting asked the question, do you think the incidents with Hamilton in 2021 have contributed to what we are seeing today? But Toto, though, disagrees and says, look, I don't think you can take this conclusion. It has been so long, and from our side, we're in a very different place today, and I think Max is as well. It takes two to tango, implying, of course, that Norris was also partly at fault. I haven't seen Lando and Max's race, to be honest. I haven't even seen how all of that came about. I first need to watch it before I have an opinion, but I wouldn't see that as a big consequence of 2021 not having been managed well to what's happened in 2024. I don't think they have a correlation. So, look, this is the words of someone that you would not expect them to say if Hamilton was still at the team. For example, if Hamilton was going to stick around, I don't think Toto would make comments such as this, because first of all, it's kind of diminishing to some degree what's happened with, Hamilton and Verstappen back in 2021, but also it's quite clearly coming to the defense of Max, because the stewards say Max is at fault. That's the feeling of McLaren, obviously, but Toto, an entirely different team's team boss, is saying, no, nothing to do with that. Max is perfectly fine what he's done in his career, no problems at all, and, there's no correlation between what happened a few years ago and what is happening today. So, yeah, what do we think about that? Because lots of coverage, of course, from this comment from the Mercedes side. I think, honestly, in some sense, Toto might be in the feeling of, what, the time with Lewis is over, so there's no point thinking about that too much. Yes, sure, Hamilton won all those championships for the team, but the time is coming to an end. So, sure, Toto says, we're going to win a race with Hamilton this year. Like, the opportunities are going to be there. We saw what he did in Spain. There's more opportunities going forwards. Hamilton had some damage as well. We'll see in a second during the Grand Prix. And of course, then was unable to get a podium, partly a result. But it seems like Toto, as far as Toto is concerned, Hamilton is very much so in the past. And what's really important is what the future holds for the team. And whatever it takes to try and secure the Max Verstappen signature, that is what Toto's going to try and do. Maybe from a business POV, that's a wise move. But it does come across as somewhat inauthentic, or whatever you want to say. Maybe a tad insincere when the comments are so easily predictable that he's going to come to Max's defense. But intrigued to your thoughts in the comments, of course. Russell wins the race. Toto was apologetic as well to Russell, because when Max and Lando crashed, he was straight on the radio, Toto, to George, saying, hey, you can win this, George, while Russell was in a braking zone. It would have made the race like unbelievable comedy had Max and Lando crashed out and then like George binned it on the final lap or something like that for Piastri to get the win. But this time Russell holds on. They have more upgrades as well. This is why Toto is saying, look, we're going to get a win with Lewis. We're going to get more wins in the season, because Toto is painting the narrative that Mercedes are back, and therefore, because he's back, or because Mercedes are back, therefore Verstappen should join those guys going into the next couple of seasons. We shall see. Just to quickly mention, this was some damage on Hamilton's side pod. I'm pretty sure that he got some floor damage from the first lap contact with Sainz that forced him off the track, and then of course the subsequent battling from there. I'm pretty sure this damage was caused by a bit of debris from Lando Norris's car. That was the discussion anyway, that I don't think this hole in the side pod was there from lap 1, kind of like Sergio Perez had after his incident with Oscar Piastri, I think at turn 4, that was relatively early on. I think there was a clip that showed this contact basically after the Norris crash. That's when the debris caused this damage. But yeah, there was most certainly damage within that vehicle. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.